Okay, so I'm going to show you how it is that I came out with the square that I used on my Bobbinwork project. So what I have open on my computer right now is the Janome AcuStitch program that we have all purchased to create tapered stitch embroidery designs using decorative stitches that are either in the AcuStitch program or that are in our Stitch Composer program, if you've ever created any stitches in Stitch Composer, that is. Anyway, I created a square here, and I actually used two stitches in this square that I created in Stitch Composer. This section here that I'm pointing at, which is this little red ball stitch, is my tiny ball that I have created. And then this decorative stitch here that's in the black is also another one that I created. And anyway, I was able to import those and use them in this little decorative stitch square. So I'm not going to go into great detail about how I made this square because you all know how to use the AcuStitch program. There's only a couple of little things that I'm going to mention to you about it. Basically, on the Home tab, I did use the square tool. All right, and what I'm going to do is just quickly walk you through one of the changes that I made in one of my stitches. So the one that I'm looking at actually is my one called the Tiny Ball. I am going to be sending you all a new version of Tiny Ball. I think I've shared one with you previously, but I've done a little bit of tweaking to this one, and I think I like this one a little bit better. So I used Tiny Ball, and I opened it up, and when you're in this setting screen where you can make your adjustments to the size of the square that you're going to be making, if you click on your advanced settings, one of the changes that I did make here was in the space size. So you will notice that the space size is 0, which basically means that each little tiny ball or any of the motifs that you might be using are going to be right up against one another when they are actually created as stitches for your design. So what I did with mine is I just clicked on this little arrow and I changed that stitch spacing to about a 0.3. And I think I also adjusted the pattern width and the length of this a little bit. I think I made it a little bit bigger. I can't remember right now because it's already been a couple days since I did this, but I did change that spacing size. And then, of course, I did decide what size I wanted my square to be in the overall length. So let's just say I'm going to raise this up to 50 millimeters. I'm going to convert this and close the screen. So it's this black one that's right in here. And what I just want you to notice about it is because I did change that spacing on it. Let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. It actually created a little bit of space in between each one of these little tiny balls, and I felt like that would be somewhat more attractive. Okay, anyway, I wanted to show that to you. So how did I come up with this size of a square? Well, this is what I did. I used my Hatch embroidery program, and one of the functions in the digitizing program is that in our section for creating layouts, we have the ability to define a work area. So what I did with this is I opened define work area up. I made sure that this little lock stitch button was not locked so that I could put in the size of the rectangle that I wanted to use. So what I did is I knew that I wanted to use this Bobbinwork project in a functional way somewhere in my home. And I decided that I would make a little pillow or a cushion cover. So I walked around my house and I found one that needed a new fresh cover, and I measured that pillow form, and it was 16 inches wide by 12 inches high. So that was going to be the workspace that I was going to have to fill up with my decorative bobbin work. So that's how I created my work area. All right, so this is the work area here on the screen that you see here with the light green box. The next thing I did was, because I knew that I was going to make a square and I knew I wanted my square to be on point, which basically means that I wanted it to look like this once I had it um, in my actual project. I needed to figure out how big of a square I actually wanted. So I created a square, and in this program, the way that you do that is in Digitize toolbar, I can select rectangle and square. Once that's selected, if I hold down my control key on my keyboard at the same time that I'm dragging and dropping a square shape here on the screen by holding down my left mouse button, and I click on it, that's, oops, let me try that again. All right, there. If I hold down the control key at the same time, then I'm going to get a symmetrical square. That one was a boo-boo, so let me delete that one. Creating a bunch of things here that I didn't want to create. Okay, so what I did is I created a symmetrical square, and then with that square, I just selected it and I rotated it 15 degrees until I had it on point. All right, so then what I did with this is I knew that I wanted to have 3 squares across the decorative area here on my workspace. I'm going to delete this one so it doesn't get confusing. And so what another tool that's in these digitizing programs is that in our create layouts area, we also have this ability to just duplicate our objects. So I'm going to mirror this object in the horizontal position, select my enter key. I'm going to get it one more time because I'm going to do 3 of these, and select it and enter. All right, so once I had all 3 of my squares here in my workspace, I'm just going to select all 3 of them and holding down my control key. So what I did is I made sure that the first one was over here on the border of my workspace, my work area. So I'm holding down my control key because this is going to keep everything symmetrical. And I'm just going to squish them down a little bit until my squares all fit within my space right here. Okay, then I'm going to select them all and just make sure that they are centered to the work area, which basically means that they're all centered in here. Now I'm not going to position them in that spot on my project, but this is just so that I can figure out how big of a square I need to make. So I'm just going to select one of the squares and I'm going to rotate it back into this orientation. And how big is that square? Right here it's measuring in my context toolbar that it's actually about 3 3/4 inches, just slightly bigger than 3 3/4 inches in the width and in the height. All right, so that's how I knew when I was back in my AcuStitch program how big of a square I was going to make over here. All right, so one of the problems with our AcuStitch program is that we don't have the ability to switch out of the metric system, and so we need to just do some conversion just to make sure that we know how big this is going to be. Anyway, that's how I got the working size of my square over here in AcuStitch. All right, so I thought that was going to be something that I was going to show you here about the AcuStitch square.